I've been a paramedic in Columbus for 9 years. Somewhere around 4,000 calls. Why, I remember every cardiac arrest I've ever worked, every address, every staircase I've carried a stretcher up or down. I'm telling you this so you understand. I don't forget where I've been. I don't confuse one house with another. I don't invent patients. On March the 14th, I was dispatched to 1438 Dunmore Avenue for a fall with injury. I walked into that house, climbed the stairs, and treated a 70-year-old man named Gerald Machen with a broken hip. My partner was with me. We carried him down the staircase, loaded him in the rig, and transported him to Grant Medical Center. The city of Columbus says that address has never existed. The lot was never assigned. No structure was ever built there. I'm not telling you this because I want answers. I spent 6 weeks looking for answers, and what I found was worse than not knowing. There are things about my own life I can no longer verify: my start date at work, my marriage certificate, conversations my wife remembers that I don't, and I need to say what I know while I still trust my own memory. Before it changes again. Shift started at 0700, Station 4. My partner was Danny Reyes, 3 years on the job, calm under pressure, didn't talk much. We ran 2 routine calls that morning, forgettable, the kind that blur together after a few thousand. Around 2:45, the tones dropped. CAD screen populated. 1438 Dunmore Avenue, fall with injury, elderly male down the stairs. Dunmore is on the east side. Post-war houses, aluminum siding, cracked driveways. We pulled up and I noticed the porch light was on. 2:47 in the afternoon, full daylight. Front door open about 6 inches. I grabbed the jump bag, Reyes grabbed the monitor, and we walked up. I reached for the storm door and glanced up at the porch light. It was off. I could have sworn it was burning 10 seconds ago from the street, but light plays tricks, and I wasn't there to inspect fixtures. White 2-story, narrow lot, green mailbox with hand-painted numbers, 1438. The 3 had faded until it almost looked like an 8. Inside, living room to the left, television on low, lace curtains, dark furniture, coffee smell and something mentholated. The house of a man who'd been living alone for a very long time. Staircase went straight up from the hallway. Narrow, steep runner carpet worn through in the center. Gerald Machen was on the landing at the top. Conscious, alert, oriented. Told me his name. His date of birth, November 3rd, 1953. Said his left leg buckled coming downstairs. Classic presentation. Leg shortened and externally rotated. Couldn't bear weight. Textbook hip fracture. While I was wrapping the blood pressure cuff, he looked up at me with calm brown eyes and said, "What's your name?" I told him. He nodded. Then he said, again, "What?" "Nothing." He winced. "The pain." I let it go. Patients say things. But the word didn't sit right. Not okay. Again, like confirmation, like a man who already knew the answer. I took his hand to check his pulse, and his skin was cold. Not clammy, not shocky cold the way a stone is cold. The kind of cold that doesn't come from a fall 15 minutes ago, the kind that settles into a person who's been sitting still in one place for a very long time. His fingers didn't move in mine. They just rested there, perfectly still, like they'd been waiting. We splinted the leg, carried him down in the stair chair. The second step from the top creaked under Reyes's foot. There was a framed picture of a lighthouse on the wall above the landing. I filed those details away without knowing I'd need them. During the transport, I asked for his insurance card. He handed one over, a standard-looking logo group number. But the member ID was 14 characters. Most are 9 or 10. The group number prefix was nothing I'd seen in 9 years. I almost asked, but he was in pain, and verifying coverage isn't my job. Handoff to Dr. Adebayo, Trauma 2, 3:31 p.m., PCR completed in the EMS bay. We cleared and went back in service. I didn't think about 1438 Dunmore again for 3 days. Monday, Carla Simmons, QR coordinator, flagged my PCR. The address couldn't be verified. No match in the county database, no match in the USPS system. 1438 Dunmore Avenue didn't correspond to any property in Franklin County. I told her I'd drive by and correct the house number. Probably transposed a digit. That afternoon I drove to Dunmore. Found 1434, then 1436, tan ranch, dog in the yard. Then a chain link fence around an empty lot. Weeds, broken glass, a rusted no dumping sign. Then 1440. No 1438. No White House. No porch, no mailbox, no staircase. I got out and stood at the fence. The lot was bare dirt and scrub. No foundation, no demolition debris, no utility stubs. Nothing had ever been here. But the space between 1436 and 1440 was wide. Too wide for what should be an empty gap between two houses. I paced it off. 28 feet. Room enough for a narrow house. Room enough for the house I was inside 3 days ago. I stood there smelling cut grass from someone's yard, and I could still feel Gerald's cold hand in mine. I went to dispatch the next morning. The 911 recording existed a woman's voice. Calm. I need an ambulance at 1438 Dunmore Avenue. My neighbor fell down the stairs. The caller couldn't be identified. The ANI didn't resolve. Kevin in dispatch said that happened sometimes. The CAD entry now read, 1438 Dunmore Avenue, unverified. It didn't say that on March 14th. I read the screen when the call dropped. There was no flag. Someone modified the record after the fact. Kevin said the system showed it as part of the original entry. I didn't argue. There was no point arguing with the system. I called Reyes. He remembered the call vaguely. The hip fracture, right? The older patient? He thought the address was on Belmont. He wasn't sure. I don't memorize addresses like you do. Then I drove to Grant Medical. Asked the ER clerk to pull Gerald Machen, date of birth November 3rd, 53, brought in March 14th, hip fracture. Nothing, no patient by that name, no admission, no registration. I asked about Adebayo's assignment. She wasn't in trauma 2 that day. The log showed no EMS handoff for a hip fracture at any point during her shift. Standing in that ER hallway, something changed in me. The empty lot was confusing. The modified CAD entry was frustrating, but the hospital I was here. I stood in Trauma 2 and spoke to Dr. Adebayo, and she signed my PCR. I can see her face. I remember the pen she used. And the system says it didn't happen, and the system has a signature log and a staffing record and a patient database that all agree with each other, and I have nothing but the memory of a pen. That was the first time I felt afraid. Not confused, afraid. That same week, I was in the records room pulling documentation for the Dunmore call, anything I could find, any paper trail. And I had my personnel file open on the adjacent screen because I needed my employee ID number for a FOIA request. And I saw my hire date, August 15th, 2016. I started June 1st, 2015. I remember my preceptor, Jackie Harmon. I remember my first call, a seizure on Livingston Avenue in the rain. I remember everything about that summer. I went to HR that afternoon. They confirmed August 2016, showed me the signed offer letter. My signature, my handwriting, a date I didn't write. I had a photo on my phone, the department cookout, September 2015. Me, Jackie, 2 other medics at Station 7. I checked the metadata. September 2016. The phone agreed with HR. I stood in the HR office, and for the first time I thought, this isn't just about an address. Something is wrong with my records. Something is wrong with the system's version of me. I searched the CAD system for other calls flagged unverified. Found 11 in the past 3 years. Different crews, different stations, different neighborhoods. The medics who'd run those calls, 2 resigned. 1 on admin leave. 3 transferred. The rest either couldn't remember or wouldn't talk about it. 1 agreed to meet. Maria Torres, formerly Station 11. She'd left the department to work urgent care. We met at a diner in Westerville. She looked like someone who'd stopped sleeping a long time ago and gotten used to it. 2291 Harvester Road, she said before I asked. Chest pain, 56-year-old woman, textbook STEMI, perfect save, except the address doesn't exist. The patient was never registered at Riverside Methodist, and my PCR was flagged 3 days later. Same pattern. Exactly the same. I filed a complaint. The version in my personnel file is about scheduling conflicts, different words. My signature. She turned her coffee cup. Drop it. The more you look, the more things change. Not just records. Things around you. Things about you. And they don't change back. That night, in my car, I texted her one question I'd forgotten. The patient you treated, what did she look like? 3 hours later, she replied. 1 line. You already know what he looked like. You already asked me this. Her patient was a woman. She told me that herself, but her text said, he. And she said already like we'd had this conversation before, like I'd been through this before and didn't remember. I typed a response, failed to send, called the number, disconnected. Within an hour, the number didn't exist. I sat in my car until the parking lot lights came on and the diner closed behind me. I kept staring at her last message on the screen. You already asked me this. I hadn't. But she was certain. And Torres wasn't the kind of person who got things wrong. That was the whole reason she'd fought her department in the first place. Unless she was right. Unless I had asked. Unless there was a version of this I'd already lived through. And couldn't remember. I bought a composition notebook. Black and white cover, started carrying it every shift. After every call address, patient name, complaint, times, destination. In ink, at home, away from any system. If records were going to change, I wanted a copy nothing could reach. I need to tell you about Sarah now. My wife. She's the part that scares me most. 3 weeks after the Dunmore call, I was at the kitchen table with a notebook. Sarah walked in, asked what I was working on. I mentioned a problem with a call on Dunmore Avenue. She leaned against the counter. Dunmore. That's where you had that call a couple years ago, right? The woman with the broken hip? I stopped writing. I had never told Sarah about the Dunmore call, any version of it. And she was describing the system's version of woman, not Gerald Machen. The corrected version, the one in the PCR I didn't write. She was remembering it with the easy confidence of a normal Tuesday night, something I'd told her when I got home from work. You said it was a sad call, she said. The old woman living alone. I didn't tell her that, I am certain. A few days later, I found our marriage certificate in the filing cabinet. It said October 15th, 2017. We got married October 15th, 2016. I remember the garden behind the hotel in German Village. I remember her grandfather's poem. I brought it up that night. Sarah laughed. 2017, babe. We pushed it back because of my mom's surgery. Her mom's surgery. I don't remember her mom having surgery. But the certificate says 2017, and Sarah says 2017, and I'm alone in remembering 2016. Things accelerated after that. Reyes started describing the Dunmore call with specific confidence, a one-story house on Belmont Avenue. A woman. A kitchen floor. Details I didn't recognize from a version of events I didn't experience. I checked the PCR. My handwriting. 1438 Belmont Avenue. Patient, Helen Garrity, female, 72. Kitchen 4. No stairs. I remember stairs. I remember a banister. I remember a lighthouse painting on the wall. Gerald Machen didn't exist. Ohio DMV, nothing. Social Security, nothing. No record in any database in the country that a person by that name was ever born. And the small shifts kept coming. A call from January. My notebook said 871 Cleveland Avenue. The PCR said 891, one digit. A patient name from February. My notebook said Michael. The PCR said Mitchell, one letter. A dispatch time shifted by 9 minutes. Nothing that would trigger a review. Nothing anyone would catch unless they were cross-referencing every entry against a handwritten notebook hidden in their nightstand. One night, I was flipping through old PCRs. Not Dunmore. Just random calls from months ago, and I stopped on one from November. A chest pain call on the south side. I remembered running it. I remembered the patient, an overweight guy in his 50s watching a football game. I remembered his wife standing in the doorway. But looking at the PCR, the address was on a street I didn't recognize, and the patient's age was listed as 63, not 50s. And the chief complaint said shortness of breath, not chest pain. I sat there staring at it. I couldn't tell if my memory was wrong or the report had changed. And for the first time, I understood that I would never be able to answer that question about this call or any other. I had 4,000 runs behind me, and I could no longer be certain that any of them happened the way I remembered. I tried to reach Torres. All numbers disconnected. Checked the department roster. From her error, she wasn't on it. Asked around Station 11. One guy thought the name sounded familiar. Couldn't say when she worked there. The mutual friend who gave me her number didn't remember doing it. Torres was fading the same way Gerald had. Not dramatically. Just one record at a time, until there was nothing left to prove she'd been real. 6 weeks after Dunmore. Meeting with Lieutenant Chen and Carla Simmons. Records review, not disciplinary. They walked through my file. Call volume on target. Response times within standards. PCR completion, 98.7%. Not a single unverified address. I looked at March 14th. 3 runs, the diabetic, the fender bender, and a call to 1438. Belmont Avenue, fall with injury. Female 72, hip fracture, transported to Grant. Address verified. Patient records confirmed. Everything clean. No Dunmore. No Gerald Machin. No staircase. The Belmont PCR was my handwriting. Helen Garrity, kitchen fall, no stairs. Insurance documented in a normal 10-digit format. Everything made sense. Chen asked if it all looked accurate. I thought about what happens when a paramedic tells his lieutenant that the records are wrong, that he treated a man who doesn't exist in a house that was never built, and that his wife remembers a conversation that never happened. "Looks good," I said. Sitting in my car afterward, engine off. I understood. The system doesn't make mistakes. Every record supports every other record. Every timestamp, every signature, every address fits. The whole thing is airtight. The only contradiction is me. And if you asked anyone, any doctor, any judge, any reasonable person, which is more reliable, a verified system of cross-referenced records or the memory of one tired paramedic, they'd pick the system. They'd be right to. Memory is the least credible evidence there is. But I felt Gerald's cold hand. I heard the step creak. I saw the lighthouse on the wall, and he said, "Again." And he meant something by it that I'm not supposed to understand. I still work at Station 4. I still run every call. I keep the notebook. Most nights, when I compare my entries to the CAD records, everything matches. Some nights, a digit is different, a name is wrong, a time has shifted. I circle the discrepancy in red ink and move on. Last Tuesday, I ran a call. Routine. Fall with injury. Elderly patient. Residential address. Did my assessment, splintered the leg, transported to Grant. Wrote the PCR. Came home, ate dinner, sat down at the kitchen table and opened the notebook. I wrote the address. Then I read what I'd written. 1438 Dunmore Avenue. I'd been there that day, inside the house. I treated a patient at the address I'd spent 6 weeks obsessing over, the address the city says doesn't exist, and I didn't notice. I didn't recognize it. I didn't feel anything wrong. It was just another call, just another house, just another old person who fell. I checked the CAD. The call was there. 1438 Dunmore Avenue. Not flagged, not unverified. Just an address. Like it had always existed. I drove to Dunmore the next morning, counted the houses. 1434, 1436, 1438. A white two-story, narrow lot, green mailbox, porch light on, an old man sitting on the front porch in a metal chair reading a newspaper. He looked up as I passed, and he waved, not a stranger's wave. The wave you give someone you recognize, someone you've been expecting. I didn't stop. The notebook only works if I check it. It only catches what I remember to write, and last Tuesday I almost didn't open it. I almost ate dinner, watched TV, went to bed. I almost let 1438 Dunmore Avenue pass through my shift without a second thought. Which means it could have happened before. Every call I didn't log, every shift I was tired and skipped the notebook, every night I went straight to sleep. Any one of those could have been a house that doesn't exist, a patient who was never born. I would never know. That's the nature of it. If the system can change records and rewrite memories and correct everything around me, then the only barrier left is a composition notebook and my willingness to open it. Some mornings I come downstairs and the kitchen light is already on. The chair is pulled out from the table and the notebook is sitting there, open to a fresh page, pen beside it, cap off, like someone was just writing in it.